All right, Stephen, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Zeb.
Yes, sir. All right, so before we dive into the overarching conversation of AI in the mortgage industry, can you share a bit about your background and ultimately what you're doing now?
Yeah, actually, I'm a computer engineer, but I've been in business process optimization at the enterprise software level for many, many years, at an executive CEO level. And about 10 years ago, I decided to go after mortgage, and I think we pioneered the use of AI in the mortgage industry back in 2015 when we began this journey. So that's what I'm doing now, trying to sort of make it very operational at the enterprise level.
I wanted to ask you, how has your assessment of what AI can deliver to the industry, what it can bring to the industry, how has that evolved, and where are you at now in that thinking process?
Yeah, well, so much of this is about education, and the industry had very, very high expectations. I think they're now being tempered with actually putting it in practice, right? And we're working with customers now today, and we're actually doing real use cases and optimizing that. And I think what we're learning, and they're learning, is that AI is really going to augment the workforces today and improve the workflows, and that's where the ROI is going to come from. So I think we're getting more practical with it from this original very, very, and it's still out there, but I think we're getting more educated over time here.
I think education obviously is key. I'm curious to know, when what you just said, like this, it's like overpromising perhaps, or gassing up of what AI is going to do. How much of that do you believe? I'm not a spicy take or anything, but how much of that is due to people in the industry or practitioners in the industry fundamentally not understanding what AI is, what it has to offer, versus vendors, companies, news cycles gassing people up about all of the possibilities and leading them astray? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense, Zeb. And I think it is outside influencers that have sort of, changed the view of, the industry, the mortgage industry. I mean, they talk about these incredible, first of all, they talk about huge reductions in force and talk about, automating, everything. And I think it is coming from the outside influencers, but as we get more educated, I mean, just what AI is not really well understood. Most people think of it as a model, a large language model, but in fact, it's really about how you consume that AI, that's going to drive adoption, right? And give you ROI on use cases. How do you consume it? And you got to consume it through a SaaS platform. You can't consume it as just a model. So I think those are the kind of practical things that this industry is wrestling with right now.
I'm going to ask you, can you break that down for me? Because I've thought about this, and I've brought this up quite a bit in my conversations where education, language is it's everything, right? It's how you conceptualize ideas and express ideas. And so I haven't really seen a coherent or a codified definition or agreed upon definition in the industry of what AI actually is within the mortgage industry. So can you break that down and how you would define AI and its place, or how it exists, or how we should conceptualize it in our industry?
Yeah. I'll give it a shot, for sure.
A loaded question, I'm sure, right?
No, I'll give it a shot. I mean, it clearly is a combination of a model and a platform, and I call it AI SaaS, frankly. If you really want to think about AI, it's going to be a model. It's going to be a very capable model that's going to basically, for different use cases, it's going to automate and get to decisioning, automate processes for different stages of the mortgage process. But then you got to consume it, and everybody's heads down. Nobody has extra staff, so you got to consume it through a SaaS platform. So I think you got to think about both together. You got AI, you got SaaS. You got to put them together, and then you have an intuitive way to consume AI, I think.
Okay. The mortgage industry is notorious for. This touches back on our previous question, but we're pretty notorious for overpromising, specifically on tech that underdelivers. Why do you think this is a pattern that keeps repeating? And do you see, or what parts of those patterns do you see, or that pattern do you see kind of repeating right now?
Yeah.
Obviously, the education piece is one piece, but what else?
Yeah. I've lived it. I mean, I talked to so many CEOs and owners who have told me, Steve, technology adoption is so disappointing, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the big culprit here is change management. It's not well understood. It's not invested in. Initially it was sort of a top down. Let's push it top down. Well, I think the industry learned you can't push technology top down. So then they started to get the users involved. So the users were part of the decision, but that only takes you part way. The last key piece is you need a workforce plan. You need a plan for how you're going to basically, get this adopted. And often it's basically you get some of the really influential loan officers or underwriters on board, and then they help sell it internally. I think adoption is a process. It's definitely a process. It doesn't happen with the flip of a switch, but it is a process. And I think change management is really what's been missing. With AI being something that continues to learn and get smarter, I think it requires even more of a change management plan, because it's going to continue to take on and augment more and more of the personas in the workflow, and so you got to have a continuous evolving change management plan.
On that, people are very concerned about the replacing of jobs. What new professions or job possibilities might be arising as a result of this integration? Like you were talking about change management plan, right? That in and of itself could be its own career field, basically, within the mortgage industry. So what positions or jobs do you see arising in the future?
Well, I certainly see existing users basically doing different things. You're going to have LOs and processors, so they're going to have a whole lot more time to spend with borrowers, which is going to create a deeper relationship. They're going to get so much more productive, right? I think the other big win is going to be that lenders can grow without adding more staff. So I don't know whether we'll see new roles, but we're going to see existing roles become more valuable to the lender. They're going to do more valuable stuff. They're going to do corner case loans. They're going to be difficult things, more non-QM. There's a lot of things they can go to from an augmentation with a great tool like AI.
I was going to talk to you about interoperability tax, which is the cost that lenders are paying because their systems aren't really talking to one another. Now, I know there's a pretty obvious answer to this question, but can you walk me through that and explain how AI changes that for lenders beyond the very obvious?
Yeah. So let's talk about what it is. So it's very clear. Interoperability, is the ability for the tools to all seamlessly work with one another, right? Lenders will acquire tools from multiple vendors. I mean, certainly there's big platform providers that try to get it all integrated together, but in reality, I think you're still going to need multiple vendors to solve the problems. It's a subject matter expertise business, and so what we have done and what we think is the right way to go is to have what we call a common data layer. All the tools can be integrated at the data level, and at that point, they can be seamless, right? I mean, you still have to do the API level integrations to pass data back and forth, but if they're using the same data, and so that's why a lot of our customers really focus on, let's get a strong data foundation in place first. Get the common data layer. Then every tool downstream is going to use that same data to do income analysis, to do post-close, to do automated underwriting. It's all on the same data. That's the integration I think that matters most. Today, you have different data sources for each of the different tools, and that's when you get into trouble and you get discrepancies that have to be worked out and QC'd out.
Right. Talk to me about the bow mole effect. I had done a podcast a couple of months ago about this that you had made a comment on as it relates for efficiency and profitability in the mortgage industry. Because the basic, as it pertains to our industry, if we have AI in this augmented role, the AI plus human model, and let's say you have a branch that has 5 processors, AI comes along and is able to not replace all processors, but you don't need 5 processors, you need 3 processors. And a very simplistic take is like, oh, well, now I only have to pay 3 processors. I'm making all that extra money on the 2 processors I had to let go. But that's not actually, historically, that's not really how it works. Most of the time, if you can, it's going to be a higher skilled role. These processors are going to be filling out different aspects of a non-traditional processor role, and therefore would probably need to be paid more. So the cost of 3 processors might rise. It may not equal what you were paying 5 processors, but you're not going to pay 3 processors the exact same amount that you did previously. And so walk me through how you see lenders or people in the industry weighing that out. Or do you think that they're just seeing it for like, okay, we're going to be able to reduce headcount, marginally or whatever, and then we're going to reap all of that cost based on what it costs right now, not what it's going to cost in a couple of years from now when we've got fewer people doing more detailed or highly skilled work tied to AI.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, no, I would say this, Zeb. We should start thinking about the ratio that exists. Today, there's a ratio of loan officers to processors, right? And so if the processor now is doubly productive because of AI, what it really means is we can go hire some more loan officers without having to hire more processors. So now I can drive the top line, right? I can, today a lender doesn't just go hire a loan officer if they don't have the processor capacity to handle it. But if they have the processor capacity because of AI, they can go add 2, 3, 4 more loan officers and keep the processor headcount the same. So now that branch, that office is doing a lot more business, right? And so I think that's kind of how things are going to roll out. There might be some cutting of headcount, but I think it's going to be more growing and in a very productive way, very cost-effective way.
I wanted to ask you about AI drift, which is a concern. I don't hear that phrase discussed a lot in our industry.
Yeah.
But it's basically when systems perform well upon launching, and then as conditions shift, things degrade inside the machine. How do you think about that problem, from an AI standpoint, where when AI is integrated versus where it can take processes and systems and workflows 6 months later?
We've seen it. We've actually seen it, and we have mechanisms in place to sort of continually recalibrate, so that we don't see that, because it is something that's going to happen. It's just so much data that's flowing in, and AI might start to make bad decisions and make wrong conclusions, and so we see that. But it is about calibration. I think it shows up more in true decisioning platforms, right? We're using AI to extract information and build that data foundation to feed decisioning. Nonetheless, we'll see it, but I think it's about, you have to calibrate. You have to first of all know it exists. You got to calibrate. You can't let it get out of control, and I think that's really that's the way to handle it. But you got to acknowledge you have it. It's going to happen.
Right. Where do you think the industry sits right now on the AI adoption curve?
Yeah, it's really early days. Every time I got started in this in 2015, we really pioneered the use of computer vision and neural networks to process mortgage docs in 2015. That was a business that I founded and built and sold. And I thought we were early. And back then, no one was talking about AI. And that's one of the ways we built a very large customer base very quickly, because we had no competition and everybody wanted to but it was also a lot of playing and piloting. Here we are now 10 years later, and it's further along. In fact, the train's left the station. If you're not looking at AI, then you're in trouble. But at the same time, the adoption beyond piloting is still a handful of companies.
Yeah.
We were just on stage with Fairway Independent Mortgage, and their rollout at an enterprise level with us. But and then you got Rocket, you got a few others. But other than that, it's still early days. I think a year from now, we'll see a lot. It's going to grow fast, but it's still in the beginning stages of adoption.
I've got kind of a heady question for you, because I'm curious to know what you think about what the industry looks like on the other side of the adoption curve, and if you think that signals the end of something or the beginning of something, right? Because once the industry has fully adopted AI, is there any to me that would signal the end of an era of technology usage and relationship between the person and the technology, and then that what lies at the end of this adoption we don't quite really know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and we don't know. I think we can probably predict some consolidation, because the lenders that have been able to afford investment in AI and really take it to its end game should have a significant advantage in their time to close loans, right? We could see just dramatic changes in how quickly a loan closes, right? We could see really the cost of loans, the productivity should be really dramatic. So I think you'll see some consolidation maybe among lenders. You might also see some consolidation among loan officers, right? I think the really good ones are just going to get even better. And then the long tail of those that have always struggled, maybe to adopt technology or just struggled, there'll be no need for them to be there anymore. So I think we'll see consolidation for sure, some dramatic improvements that the borrower should benefit from, right? But it probably will signal a bit of an end. There'll be the next shiny jewel after that.
Right.
But I think this is going to be, I'm just thinking about where we might be in 5 years, right? I think all of the things I just said are going to probably happen over the next 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me. We're running up on our time. I'd like to have you back on for a longer conversation, though, in the near future.
Zeb,
okay
would
with
love
that?
it. It was
Yes, sir.
great questions. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, that was good.